Welcome to Define Your Path with DocV, bringing you real talk with global thought leaders to inspire hearts and minds for sustainable breakthroughs and profitability for your life and business. Here's your host, DocV.
Hi, I'm Dr. Virginia LeBlanc, also known as DocV, the Pivot Maestro. Welcome to the Define Your Path podcast for those seeking to define their own path into purposed entrepreneurship. This is a show about transforming perspectives, as well as inspiring and motivating you to think without a box by exposing you to global thought leaders, change agents, and legacy builders across industries on how they successfully define their path in life and business to profitability and sustainable wins. At Defining Paths, we operate in truth, transparency, and love to help you navigate the waters of your life and put you back in business. And the Define Your Path podcast is absolutely no different, folks. It is all about your mind. It starts in the mind. The question, will you be the captain or the crew? Folks, I am so excited about today's spotlight. She is truly a fast friend, a kindred spirit. You are going to love Marisa Jones. Folks, let me tell you a little bit about her before we bring her into the spotlight. So Marisa is the CEO of Everyday Being. She is a teacher, community builder, survivor of domestic violence, and a mindset coach. After leading a successful career as an architect and strategic advisor, leading global multi-million-dollar technology projects, she published her memoir, The Lotus Tattoo, One Woman's Grit from Bully to Redemption. Ooh, I love that. She published that in 2019, folks. And now she's focusing on helping women balance mental health challenges with career success. Marisa partners with corporations, nonprofits, and healing practitioners to provide mentoring and coaching through one-on-ones or workshops. She's supporting positive mental health and personal growth, folks. She's also the host of Women CEO and Reflection, a podcast where women business leaders of our world get candid about mental health. And I was so happy to be a guest on her show. Folks, Marisa currently lives in Colorado with her 2 teenage boys and their dogs. Marisa, welcome to the show, sis. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, DocV. I am so excited to be here, and you are absolutely a kindred spirit, and I'm so glad we've met. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Bless you for that. Thank you. So we look forward to hearing your story and how you faced your fears to love the skin you're in and pivot into pursuing your passion and soul purpose. So in our podcast, we love to keep it simple. We ask you 2 questions, and then you and I will just riff from those 2 questions. So the first being, how have you defined your path? And the second, how do you help others define theirs? So Marisa, the spotlight is yours.
Well, thank you, DocV. I would have to say that how I define my path was that my path defines me. I had been, I grew up with Sicilian immigrant parents in New York, and I had an abusive alcoholic father. And that taught me survival. And I spent my whole life working on living in survival mode. And I was living outside my box, as you say, right? I was supposed to get married and have babies and, not work and have a career. And I taught myself the skills to first become a secretary. And then I realized, wow, I can do so much more. And then I taught myself programming. So this path of trying to survive, was in parallel with what was going on in my mindset, which was a complete victim mentality. Everything was against me. The world was against me. I was always on the fence. And I was a bully as a child. I was a bully as a young adult. And those were parallel dichotomies that I lived with for a long time, which brought on a lot of depression and suicidal thoughts. And then in 2010, something happened, and I filed for divorce from my husband, who had been having an affair, and he got addicted to prescription drugs, and my world fell apart. My kids were young. I had depression, PTSD, and I was just at my lowest. But I was so afraid to speak out because I thought I was going to lose everything that I had built up in my technology career. I thought I was going to lose face. I had shame and guilt behind what was behind that. But I basically said to myself, I need to start over because my mind is a mess and this is not normal. Like, people aren't supposed to live with all this heaviness. And so I went on a self-help journey to find myself. And what happened was the incredible. And I was, in that time period, I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror and tell myself, I love you. It was something that happened in a workshop I was in, and the leader of the workshop passed the mirror around and said to me, to everyone, look in the mirror and say, I love you. And when the mirror came to me, I felt like a fraud. I couldn't say it. And that was when I knew how bad it was. And today I say, I love you every day. I love you. You're beautiful, because I look at my whole self. I don't look at the victim childhood. I don't look at, how much I weigh, what my hair looks like, whether I have wrinkles or not. I look at my whole authentic self.
Yes,
and
yes.
Since I started living authentically, publishing my memoir, talking about my past, talking about all the things that this colorful life that I've had, in parallel to the success I've had in my career. And so many people have come forward to talk to me about it and tell me that they've had similar demons in their closet that they never talked about, right? Whether it was abuse or addiction or whatever was depression, whatever was going on in their mind. That led me to the path of becoming a mindset coach, because I realized the importance of the work that I had done with myself.
Yes.
I spent a lot of years strengthening the mental mindset of positive thinking and affirmations and believing in myself. And it's not just hearsay. Like, I absolutely love myself. I love hanging out with me. I'm fun. I love my adventures,
Yes.
sometimes more than other people. but I love myself. And it's so much fun to love yourself. And we never look at it that way. And so that's kind of how my path defines me.
That is absolutely beautiful, Marisa. And I love learning more about the woman behind Woman CEO podcast and all that you're doing, who's been that, that project lead for multi-million-dollar companies. And I love how you're owning your story, all parts of you. I've recently was in a conversation with someone about this. Actually, I think it was on our Candid Conversation TV show, about the very thing. How oftentimes we trip up, we get caught up in life. We can't figure out how to pivot or, how to get out of our own way because we can't connect the dots. But it's in owning your story that the dots start to connect. That's what I'm hearing from your path. From early, I can't believe you were a bully, Marisa. But
you have no idea. I'm a New York Sicilian, so trust me.
Well, okay.
I used to be a lot harder than I am today.
But it's just beautiful because you have that ability. Just that transformation is amazing. Can you talk a little bit more about, like, when did you or how did you have that revelation or that epiphany, to move from kind of that whole bullying part? I'm sure that was when you were younger. When did you start processing that was, the space that you were in? And how'd you get out?
It was, I always recognized it was there, right? So even when I was younger, but even in my 20s, like, I got into fist fights with people that were twice my size, and I'm only 5'2". Like, I just had this attitude, and I knew it was always there, but I was proud of it because it was like, oh, I'm a survivor, and here's what I can do, right? And no one's going to mess with me. But I had this hard shell around me. And it was a progression over years that was little things that were eye-openers that realized a couple of things. One, every time something major happened in my life, I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle it emotionally. I couldn't handle it mentally. I literally fell to pieces. And that was one thing that was a recurring theme in my, 30s and early 40s. I also went to, I had a therapy during times I was going through some infertility issues, and my therapist said to me, and I'm thinking I'm an open book, like I'm telling everything. And she literally says to me, she's like, in my 30 years of therapy, you are the most closed up person I have ever met. And I was like, what are you talking about? But I realized it was little things like that was just a buildup that really ended when which was my wake up call when I was depressed, and my kids would be in the other room and I was emotionally detached. Like I couldn't, if they were crying or laughing, I couldn't get myself to go be with them because I just felt dead inside.
Yeah.
And I knew I had to change. And I knew that life is not about, the negative, and how, if it was possible, could I be happy? And that was my mission. And I said out loud, I'm making 100% commitment to myself to find what it feels like to be happy.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And I found it. And it's been great.
Girl, look, I'm over here with cold chills because I can relate on so many levels, and our pre-conversation was just life. So, so let's kind of pivot into, we'll keep weaving the story in and out. But let's pivot to how do you help others define theirs? And where I was kind of going with that whole bullying question, I'm looking at everything that's happening in the world and how, a service like yours, helping people deal with their mindset. And you said some key things in what you just said there about feeling dead inside, and not even being conscious of it until you came conscious. Imagine life happened to bring that forward because, everything was just so out of control. And I feel like that's what people are struggling with in the world today. So how do you help, who do you serve and how do you help them overcome those things and get focused and work on their mindset?
So I serve mostly women, professional women, because I can relate to that, right? I've been in the corporate world for a long time, and I didn't have anyone to go to that I could relate to. And so that's who my main focus is. And how I help them is I help them, those women who just wake up one day and go, who am I? Like what, I have the house, I have the career, I have everything, everything I worked for. But who am I? And, I ask my clients sometimes, like, what's your value around religion, or what's your value around family, or what's your value around relationships? And they don't know, or they answer, well, we believe. And it's like, no, not we, not you and your spouse, not you and your kids, not you and your parents. You, what do you believe? And they don't know. They don't know how to answer that question. And so what I do is I help them kind of unpack who they are. Right? Because we carry so much with us from our childhood. Yes. And, I hate to be the therapist, because I'm not a therapist, but I hate to be like, oh, well, let's go back to your childhood. But I do. We have to look at all the life impacts that have made us who we are, that have defined what our values are, what our expectations are around people and things and situations. And, what are our triggers? What sets us off, right? Where does that come from? So I help them unpack that. And then once I help them unpack that, they have a full awareness of everything that makes them tick, everything that moves them, everything that they have a passion for. And I call that their foundation of strength. And once we have their foundation of strength, everything is about moving forward with that full awareness. And they see life differently. They start making personal decisions differently. They start surrounding themselves with different people in their lives, and doing it not from a place of negativity or, oh, this person's toxic, I need to get away. It's love for themselves. They make decisions because of the love for themselves to say, I need to walk away from here. Rather than, oh, you're toxic, you're the problem, blah, blah, blah. No, I need to walk away from here. And so I help them bring an awareness of self, of who they are. And then I help them bring an awareness to what's around them. Because there is such a wonder in the world, and we miss it because we live on rote, right? Like I used to be the person that would step on roses to get to work and drive 45 minutes and not know if it was raining or snowing or sunny, right? Because I was so in my head. The burden of everything I carried, once I released that, it opened up to possibilities. So I help people look at different perspectives of everything. The cranky cashier at the grocery store, well, maybe she's going through difficult times, right? You have no idea what she's gone through. So show some softness to her, show some love to her rather than some frustration. Outside, looking at trees, like looking at nature. Nature is so beautiful, but we don't even acknowledge it sometimes. It's like, we go outside, but how closely do you look at the trees and the leaves and the flowers and and really have an awareness of all your five senses when you're looking at a tree. Like, what does that look like, right? And so I teach them things like that, to really experience the world differently and experience it from an observant perspective, and do it where you're engaged, like from wonder. And it's incredible how what I see the most in my clients is that over several months, I offer a 6-month intensive boot camp, so we really get into it. But usually by like month 3, there's a softness that comes from them. And there's a balance that comes from them, and their mindset has completely changed. And it's not to say that they don't get triggered. It's not to say that things don't happen to them and they react, but it's less, and it's more, they come more from a place of action than reaction. They come from from proactive than defense, right? And it's a completely different mindset that they come from, and it's beautiful to watch.
Yes, absolutely. Girl, you said so much. There was so much gold in that piece. And I love the fact, I think what they're experiencing is control, but not a negative sort of control. They have the awareness of their emotions and the triggers, like you said, and they can operate and walk through life. I say all the time, perspective is everything. And just, having that different perspective, it pulls you out of yourself and your circumstance and, and all of the things that might be, out of your control in your perception. So that is a beautiful thing. So literally you are moving them from, you're moving them into their individuality is what I'm hearing, finding and owning their individuality. It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. I call it their authentic self, right? Yes. Their authentic soul, who their being is, right? Because when I look in the mirror, I don't see the physical 3D of who I am, right? I see my soul, my character, right? What comes from me, what emanates from me, my passions, my hurts. I see that, right? And I get people to see that in themselves, and they walk differently when they do that.
I tell you, it's nothing better than when you're walking and living in your soul purpose. And I imagine you felt that as you released your employment and started walking in your soul purpose and helping others, because that's why we're here. We're not just here to exist, so when you really find that, and oftentimes it takes, hitting that point where you have to ask the question, like you said, who am I? What do I stand for? What will I stand for? What won't I stand for? So many people are afraid to stand up, to speak out and to hold that space, not only for themselves, but for others. So is that a part of what you do, how you help women also embrace who they are, in their femininity as well as their strength?
Absolutely. So, as I said earlier, like what we build from the very beginning, which we spend most of the time on, is their foundation of strength.
Yes.
And their foundation of strength is their triggers, their expectations, and their value system. And then we build around that. And when you have that, that's your GPS. That's everything you do is based on that. You can say, I can't go to this event because I know I have these triggers, so I'm just going to avoid it, right? And so you create like this rules of life, and you do it from a way where you're protecting and loving yourself. Yeah. And so when you operate from that strength, you move differently, you make decisions differently. And so all of the women that I help, and I like helping, I've helped some men. I like helping women just because I can relate to them from a professional perspective and some of the challenges that women have in the workplace. But it's going back to the question of the strength, right? They find a strength in self-trust in their decisions because of who they are, self-confidence. They have a renewed confidence that their belief systems are who they are. So they don't question them. And then self-love. So when you have self-love, self-confidence, and self-trust, That
Yeah.
gives you strength to
Yeah.
move through the world every day. And you do it because you're honoring yourself every single day. And
Mm.
it's a great feeling to get to when you
Yeah.
honor yourself every single day, because everything starts falling into place. If you do that, and talking about purpose, right? When you serve your purpose, you talked about me finding my purpose. My purpose changes all the time from from a task perspective, right? I'm doing the podcast, I have
Right. Right.
coaching, I do speaking engagements, right? But my purpose is to live my everyday being. My
Yeah.
purpose is to live in my authentic self. And my
Yeah.
purpose is to share that with others. And
Yeah.
that's really my true purpose. And that's how
Yeah.
I help others find that.
That is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I think it's important. And time is moving, but I want to keep you here. So
I'll stay.
yeah, girl. So let's talk about, I talk a lot about the difference between performing on purpose and soul purpose. And I just heard you make that distinction. And I don't think enough of us understand that to be able to deep dive and uncover that, or it just doesn't appear in our everyday life until we're forced to face ourselves in the mirror, like you said. And I love that example how you used. I was similar. I used to hate the way my voice sounded. I used to hate the way I look, all, you name it, until I went on this whole self-discovery and self-love journey. Let's talk a little bit about just understanding the difference between performing on purpose, like task-based, and finding your soul purpose. And it sounds like that's also, that's what I do a little bit in my business, well, what I do in my business. It sounds like you do some of that as well, kind of just checking in with them with whatever, role or position they're holding, to just help them uncover the happiness, joy, or be able to move on.
Right. So my program is called Mindset Warrior, the Art of Intentional Thinking. So with that awareness, right, the awareness of self, and then with the perspective of the world around you, right, changing your perspective, opening your eyes to different belief systems around everything from how a tree pushes leaves off of, because how leaves fall off trees versus the fact that trees actually push leaves off, which you can visually see if you look for it. It's crazy. You can see leaves shaking without winds because it's a different process, but we don't see that, right? So honoring yourself day to day and looking at the world differently changes how you live. So when you intentionally live every day with that awareness and with a new perspective and open beliefs, right? You purposely fall into your purpose.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Oh,
Because when you make those changes every single day and you honor yourself every day, a year from now, you're going to look back and go, wow, look where I am today. How did I get here? And you realize you did it because you lived intentional every day, honoring yourself.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love it. And you're not just walking through life, for lack of a better term, as a zombie, or, just kind of like, and being that cog in the wheel, playing the role that, society or conditioning tells you should play because, you're a woman or you're of a certain culture or religious belief or what have you. But literally, you are living completely aware, playing full out, and you are literally defining your path because you're identifying your values, your core values, beliefs. We talk about that as related to business all the time, but as individuals, we need to identify that for ourselves, don't you think?
Right. Absolutely. So for instance, my number one value is and I make people write value statements starting with I value because they're easy to remember. I value my mental health. That's my number one priority. Every decision I make supports that. Yeah. So think about that. If I make every decision supporting my mental health, what's going to happen to my mental health?
Yes.
In a year from now, my mental health is great because I have no toxic people, no toxic environment. Yes. I've made every decision supporting that. Now you can go down to relationships, right? I value a healthy relationship with, a man who's financially stable, or I value a healthy relationship with a man who has a good relationship with his kids, right? Like, or I value a healthy relationship with my mom who's very toxic, not mine, but my mom who's very toxic and she's a narcissist, but I value that relationship. So I'm going to create boundaries so I can have a healthy relationship with this unhealthy person, right? So I help them unpack what their value system is, down to, some clients have a list of top 10, and some have up to 30. Yeah. And my clients have actually shared these with their husbands. They do my exercises with their husbands. So I love it. And I actually had 2 that got divorced after going through my program. Well, not intentional. It was not intentional. They just identified that their values didn't align. And so when you do that every day and you are honoring yourself based on your value system, you make decisions supporting that, and your whole life changes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just to kind of speak to that situation, the example you just gave, so many of us, when we get into relationships, that aren't, familial, we've not really discovered who we are. We've not unpacked our baggage or even began to start a healing process or know our value system. So, I totally get why that occurred, but I bet you they probably parted on a much more amicable and in an easier way, because there's a respect factor there also. I think that comes with, perspective and understanding who you are, and your values.
Absolutely. One of my clients told me, she said, and she's still married, but she said, you gave me a language to talk to my husband about things, because she was on the verge of divorce and they're still together. But it was mostly around values and expectations. She said, you gave me a language that I can have a conversation with him. Things that they were never on the same page with, but now they're able to compromise or she can go to him and say, my expectation was this last night when you did this. Like, here was my expectation. Here's where it was coming from. Here's the origin of that expectation. When I was a child, blah, 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 right? And so he can see that from a different perspective because she's using the language. And then she can say, well, I value this. How do we move forward? Yeah. And so it changes your relationships, whether it's a spouse or your kids or your parents. It changes everything.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. Marisa, girl, you have dropped so many nuggets, so many diamonds over here. Look, I keep watching the time. I do not want to end this, but unfortunately, we will have to end this episode. I truly appreciate. Thank you for being our spotlight today, lady, and just sharing bearing your soul, your all, and sharing your journey of how you've defined your path and help others.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And to anyone out there listening, when you live your authentic self, there's no shame in talking about what has been, because now you can talk about the strength of who you are.
Yes, I love that. And what will be, right? Because of the strength.
Absolutely.
Yes. Audience, be sure to follow Marisa on social media. Marisa, please tell them what's the best way to connect with you. Is it through your website?
Through my website, myeverydaybeing.com.
Awesome. And folks, you may also connect with Marisa Jones. Her full bio and her social media connects, her website, all of that will be on the Define Your Path podcast platform on the Business Innovators Network. So be sure to visit our virtual home to see what we're up to at definingpaths.online. We thank you for listening and we appreciate you so much. I'm DocV, the Pivot Maestro, and always your corner woman. Be true to you and define your path so that you may be your own boss in mind, body, soul, and business. And we'll see you on our next episode. Thanks again, Marisa. I appreciate you, girl.
Thank you. Love being here. Thank you.
Yes. Bye, guys.
You've been listening to Define Your Path with DocV. To learn how to see with true vision and define your path, visit definingpaths.online/true-vision.